Hi, my name is Andrea Alcaraz, and I'm going to be discussing the legalization of marijuana. I think that the benefits of legalizing marijuana outweigh the consequences. So I'm going to briefly go over the history of marijuana in the U.S. because it will explain a lot of the racial discrepancies that still affect us today concerning marijuana. There's been a long-standing history between the U.S. and marijuana, and it surprisingly had a positive start. Colonial era United States actually greatly encouraged the industrial production of hemp, which is another word for the products derived from the cannabis sativa plant. Industrial hemp is used to create paper, rope, sails, wax, clothes, and a variety of other things, and that's exactly what the U.S. did in the 17th century. Hemp production really flourished and became quite popular until after the Civil War when import replaced the product. So popular, in fact, that marijuana was actually a widely used ingredient and was even openly sold at pharmacies. It wasn't until after the Mexican Revolution of 1910, where thousands of Mexicans immigrated to the U.S., bringing their culture and practices, which included the recreational use of marijuana, that we began to see a complete 180 on the American opinion of the drug. Marijuana quickly became associated with the new immigrants, and with their new presence in the U.S. came fear of the drug, fear which was also associated with Mexicans due to racial prejudice. Anti-drug campaigns railed and warned against the threat, the marijuana menace, and during the Great Depression, mass unemployment increased public fears of Mexican immigrants and escalated both public and governmental concern over the drugs. To put it simply, it wasn't due to any harmful effects of weed that concern began to rise, but from unjustified resentment and blame towards Mexicans over the unemployment rates which they had no control over. At this point, 23 states outlawed weed by 1931. So here we see some propaganda from the 1930s titled Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell, America's newest narcotic menace. A puff of smoke started her on her way. And we see a lot of anti-weed propaganda and sentiments around this time. In 1937, Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act, effectively criminalizing marijuana. During its criminalization, however, the New York Academy of Medicine issued a report which extensively declared that there was no evidence to support that marijuana induced violence, insanity, or led to addiction of other drug use. Even the military continued to support the production of hemp during World War II, as the U.S. Department of Agriculture utilized hemp to produce parachutes, Marine Corps Dodges, and other military gear. It launched a Hemp for Victory program and registered 375,000 acres of hemp in the United States. In the 1950s, federal laws were enacted which set mandatory sentences for drug-related offenses, but we again saw reports commissioned by Presidents Kennedy and Johnson which found that marijuana use did not induce violence or lead to use of heavier drugs. It was around this time, on the war on drugs in 1980, that we saw the three strikes or out policy, which required life sentences for repeat drug offenders. The war on drugs continued under President George Bush in 1989. But in 1996, California passed Proposition 215, allowing for the sale and medical use of marijuana for patients with AIDS, cancer, and other serious painful diseases. So here I have a quick overview of the arguments I'm going to be discussing, and here are some pros. Crime rates would reduce, racial disparities would be mitigated, and taxpayers would save money. Some cons are that marijuana is a gateway drug. They are harmful to adolescent brains, and operation of heavy machinery under its influence may be dangerous. So according to an article I found by Robert Rake, in 2017, more Americans were arrested for marijuana possession than for murder, rape, aggravated assault, and robbery combined. That's one marijuana arrest every minute. So if marijuana was legal, more than half of the arrests in 2017 would have been spared. A study was done by researchers Takama Kamada and Flora Zoutman, who looked into the FBI crime reports, and they found some pretty interesting stats. It was found that among the border states that affected of the change in the law was largest in California, where there was a reduction of 15% in violent crime, and the weakest in Arizona, where there was a fall of 7%. Crimes most strongly affected by robbery, which fell by 19%, and murder, which dropped by 10%. Homicides specifically related to drug trade fell by 41%. The effects of medical marijuana laws, or MMLs, on crime were studied using data from the Uniform Crime Reports, and it was discovered that the introduction of MMLs led to a decrease of 12.5% in violent crimes such as homicides, aggravated assaults, and robberies in states that border Mexico. The reason that MMLs work is because even though Mexican cartels smuggle other drugs like coke and heroin and methamphetamine across the border to the U.S., the market for weed is the largest drug market in the U.S., so cartels make the fattest profit off of that. In Mexico, it costs around $75 to produce a pound of weed, and then it can be sold for $6,000, which will vary depending on quality. So if smuggling is no longer an issue because of the legalization of medical use of marijuana, then the gang violence associated with the illegal trade will diminish in the bordering U.S. states. So one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, stemming from the incarceration rates due to the possession of weed is how disproportionately it affects people of color in America. The federal prohibition on marijuana dates back to anti-Mexican sentiment in the 1930s, which is why I gave that whole rundown on the origins of the legalization and then criminalization of weed. It may sound really controversial, but it largely seems that the anti-weed federal actions were taken as another ploy to criminalize communities of color. Here are some stats that support that. On average, a black person is 3.73 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than a white person, even though blacks and whites use marijuana at similar rates. Such racial disparities in marijuana possession arrests exist in all regions of the country, in counties large and small, urban and rural, wealthy and poor, and with large and small black populations, and over 96% of counties with more than 30,000 people in which at least 2% of residents are black. Blacks are arrested at a higher rate than whites for marijuana possession. So here I have a graph showing the marijuana use by race, which shows the difference in use between white and black Americans, which is not far off. Yet the incarceration rates for black Americans is disproportionately higher. State and local governments have aggressively enforced marijuana laws selectively against black people and communities, needlessly ensnaring hundreds and thousands of people in the criminal justice system at a tremendous human and financial cost. This was said by Ezekiel Edwards. As you can see by this chart, it shows the differences between white, Mexican, and black arrests for marijuana possession in New York City. So, of course, capitalist America isn't going to bat an eye and institutionalize racism concerning incarceration rates, but maybe hearing about the money they would have saved if weed was legal would pique some more interest. 8.2 million arrests were made in 2001 to 2010 in the U.S. for the possession, sale, and/or use of marijuana. And enforcing possession laws that led to those arrests cost police $3.6 billion every year. The amount comprises nearly 6% of America's total criminal justice expenditure. Weed's criminalization also artificially raises the plant's retail price and diverts billions of dollars into the black market economy, the study finds. According to the report, Lost Taxes and Other Money Lost Due to Marijuana Laws, Americans spend around $113 billion annually to consume an estimated 31.1 million pounds of weed. By criminalizing the market, the study estimates that the government loses more than $30 billion per year in potential tax revenue. A lot of capital is turned away from the legal market and diverted towards the black market, where most marijuana sales are made, creating a large missed opportunity where states could tax the sale of legal marijuana, actually generating a very valuable source of additional revenue for a state. Not only is there the cost of enforcement of possession laws, but if you're caught up in the illegal trade, defending a marijuana arrest can cost anywhere between $2,000 and $20,000 for individuals who want to fight the case, and some jurisdictions have further financial consequences. So here I have some arguments on why it would be counterproductive to legalize marijuana. There's some popular arguments. A lot of people like to argue that marijuana is a gateway drug, meaning it will increase the likelihood of turning to other more serious drugs such as heroin or meth, when in reality, weed can be seen as a terminus drug, because statistics show that most people who have tried the drug don't actually go on to try harder substances. The term gateway drug was coined during Reagan's war on drugs in 1984 and completely demonized marijuana after completely misunderstanding a paper done by Robert DuPont Jr. called Getting Tough on Gateway Drugs, a guide for the family, where DuPont explicitly states it is not likely that adolescents would be led to more serious drugs after the use of marijuana. This whole misunderstanding can be explained by the slippery slope fallacy, as Reagan's irresponsible implications altered the populace's stance on the drug. It can also be said that the correlation does not equal causation, or cum hoc ergo propter hoc. The reason I say this is because although it may be true that when questioned, many hard drug users may admit that they began with weed during the journey into drugs. But marijuana is the most widely used illicit substance in the U.S., And if the gateway theory was true, then we would see a much, much, much higher number of hardcore drug users. Also, through the gateway logic, it could be said that drinking milk is a gateway to illicit drug use because many users drink milk when they're younger. Some people would also argue that weed may be harmful to adolescent brains. That's not an argument I'm going to refute because it's scientifically proven that weed is both addictive and harmful to developing brain. But the point of legalizing isn't to hand it over to developing children and teens. As alcohol and cigarettes have age requirements for the purchase and distribution, so would weed. And lastly, a common argument against weed I came across was that some people say that operating heavy machinery under its influence may be dangerous. It is actually true that weed can and will impair judgment. This is just another argument used to fearmonger and demonize the use of weed. And again, just as alcohol has laws against operating machinery during its influence, there is no reason that weed should be exempt from similar laws. Many people turn to the perfectionist fallacy when discussing the legalization of marijuana, and in turn leading to the formulation of endless mundane what-if situations, which simply put, alcohol has led to what is now 40% of violent crimes and 40% of traffic fatalities, yet it's still legal. Not to mention nicotine kills more people than alcohol and drugs combined, and it's also legal. It's kind of obvious that the line from legal to illegal is arbitrary, and our subconscious connection of violence to illegal substances stems solely from the fact that they're illegal. So those are my thoughts on the legalization of marijuana. Thank you.